Okay, so today we are going to be talking about persuasive arguments, and we are doing this to introduce the topic so you guys can work on a persuasive assignment later on in the week. So, in short, a persuasive argument is when you are trying to convince somebody to either agree with a statement or a thought that you might have, or to get them to do something that you want them to do, or change behavior of some sort. So an example might be persuading your parents to give you an allowance. Maybe you don't get an allowance and you would like to get some money each week from your parents. So you would be persuading them if you're trying to convince them to do this. Our turkey over here in the corner is trying to persuade us to eat beef instead of turkey, because he doesn't want to be dinner. So we're going to start off making a persuasive argument by thinking about and making our claim. So thinking about what you're trying to argue or assert, and you might want to think about things that might shape your opinion. So the fact that you don't get an allowance, and maybe you found out that your friend gets an allowance, might shape your opinion as to why you think that you should be getting an allowance. You'll also want to think about your intended audience. So in this example, your intended audience would be your parents. So you'll want to consider reasons that might that your parents might be more open to, rather than if you were talking to a friend. Personally, I know my parents would not want to hear, well, all my friends are getting an allowance. They would say, if your friends jumped off of a bridge, would you do that too? So you might think about something different that you might want to say for your parents. Okay. So you might want to consider your perspective in thinking about, like I said, your experience and other evidence that you have encountered that might affect the way you feel, and thinking about why you feel this way. Maybe you've had a very specific experience that makes you want something to happen, and it's important to consider people who might disagree with you and to consider why they might disagree with you. So another example might be you could be persuading somebody to eat half of the amount of sugar that they eat, or eat less sugar. Maybe your family member developed type 2 diabetes from eating unhealthy food and eating too much sugar. So this might shape your point of view. Yeah, you might say, yeah, it's really bad for you. And somebody who hasn't had a family member who this has happened to might not really think it's too big of a deal if they continue eating sugar or not. So it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's right or wrong. It just means that people have different experiences that give them their particular points of view. Okay, so we are next talking about presenting evidence to support your claim. This is a little bit cut off. So right now, as soon as you have your claim or your argument in mind that you want to do your project on, you can start thinking about evidence, making notes possibly about why you feel this way, and the evidence and the arguments that you can use to help support your claim. So a lot of this information might be information that you just found out in your life. So back to the sugar, to the not eating sugar persuasive argument, you may have gotten the information that it's bad from your family member or from your parents. And you need as many supporting details as you can think of, or at least the really effective ones, because this is what's going to convince people. This is what's going to make people be willing to agree with you. Because if you have a claim and you just say, I think people should eat less sugar, and somebody says, well, why? And you just say, I don't know, I just think they should, or I have no reason, just listen to what I'm saying, then people aren't going to take your argument seriously. So we can use credible sources to form some of our supporting evidence. Not all of our evidence is necessarily going to be fact-based. Some of it might be more anecdotal, which is like based on stories, or it might be based on emotions or things like that. But if you are using facts and figures, which I definitely suggest doing, especially if it's like something that might involve, for example, like the sugar argument that involves a medical issue, so there will definitely be statistics available on that. But we want to make sure that we're getting credible information. So in general, if we use some common sense, and if we go on a website and it seems like it's a little bit funky or like the information just isn't true, then we probably don't want to use it. In general, .gov and .edu websites are considered credible. Some .org websites are considered credible, some are not. It just depends on the organization. And the same thing for .com. A lot of .com websites are not credible, but some of them are. If anything's an official website for a nationally known and used group, such as the American Red Cross or the Center for Disease Control, their official websites would be considered as credible. So we want to look at if the information is accurate. If you know that sugar is bad for you, and you're just looking for supporting information for specific statistics, or maybe a more in-depth view of the health issues that can result from eating too much sugar, and you go on a website and it says, oh, sugar is great for you, it makes you lose weight, it helps prevent the risk of type 2 diabetes, then you would probably think, okay, this information isn't very accurate, so you would not want to use that website. You want to look at who wrote the website. So certain groups might write a website to get people to agree with what they're saying, so they might bias the information. We want to look at if the evidence is credible. So if they're saying that they did a study on, let's say, dinosaurs and blah blah blah, well, clearly dinosaurs aren't around anymore, so this probably isn't credible. So it's if something is probably untrue or inaccurate. We want to look at how recent is it. So even if we do find a good, valuable website, if they haven't updated their website, and if the health information or the statistic that we find is from 1992, then it has changed since then, most likely. And so you'll want to find something as recent as possible. I would say a good guideline is if it's been published on the website within the last 5 years. We'll look at if it's biased. So like I said, it depends on who's writing it. If a candy company is writing a website about sugar, they might not want to include information on how unhealthy it is for you. So these are just things to consider, and I will be around in class to help with finding accurate websites, but these are just all things that will make your argument stronger if you have a credible source. Okay, so if you do a paper, you are going to be using this basic outline, but if you do another form of assessment, I would still like you to include this information. Just maybe it won't be in the exact same order, but it will probably be pretty close. So we're going to include an introduction where we introduce the topic, and then your thesis statement, which is your last statement of the paragraph, is going to be your claim, which is like the point of your paper. So you might introduce it by saying, sugar is consumed by millions of Americans each day, etc., etc. And then you might say, I believe that each person should cut down their sugar intake by half. And that would be your thesis statement, and that introduces how you feel for the rest of the paper. So all of your evidence is going to be in your body paragraphs. Generally we have about 3, but if you include more, we can discuss that. If you have 4 body paragraphs with different types of evidence, that's fine. Your evidence might be that for convincing somebody to cut down their sugar intake might be that it causes type 2 diabetes, it causes weight gain, and it's bad for your liver. So you'll want a paragraph for each of these, and you'll want to explain after you introduce the topic. So you might explain by saying, too much sugar may cause type 2 diabetes. And then you want to explain why this is bad. Type 2 diabetes is a serious illness that can cause a lot of medical issues. You have to inject yourself with insulin every day and regulate it. Some people might have to have their limbs amputated because this illness gets so bad. So you're using all the supporting evidence that you can to try to convince somebody of this specific argument. And you might use another statistic here and say, 30% of people with type 2 diabetes could have prevented it, or 100%, or whatever the particular statistic might be. And you're going to do this for each point in your supporting body paragraphs. You are also going to have a paragraph to refute the objections that people might have. So a counter argument is, somebody might say, well, I understand sugar is not good for you, but I don't care. I think it's delicious. That could be their objection or their counter argument. So you want to keep in mind things that you can use to refute these objections and to try to continue to convince them otherwise and to basically shut down their objection. So if somebody says, well, my parents didn't have type 2 diabetes, so I won't get it either. So I don't have to watch what I eat. You could present this, in this paragraph, you could present the evidence that, yes, there are hereditary factors with type 2 diabetes, but that doesn't mean that you won't get it. There's still a chance that any person could get this. So you have to kind of envision what the person who's objecting might say for this paragraph, and then address those issues. And then your conclusion, you're basically restating how you feel and kind of summarizing what you said in the paper, and then you can also, depending on your topic, include a call to action. So you might end it with saying, now I ask you to go out and try and eat less sugar, to try to put some responsibility on the person, but that kind of depends on what your argument is. Okay, so there are a few things we are going to consider when we are convincing the audience. If we are going to be appealing to reason, that is when I talk about using facts and figures and statistics. So either something is true or it's false. And somebody is logically, okay, yes, I want to eat less sugar because I want to be healthy. That's generally pretty logical. However, we can appeal to somebody's emotions or beliefs. So if you're appealing to somebody's emotions, let's say that you have a counter argument for why somebody should not cut down their sugar intake. You could say, remember how fun it was when you went to the ice cream parlor with your parents every Saturday, and it was just my favorite, your favorite childhood memory, and how could you replace that? So by continuing to eat ice cream every day, it makes me feel happy and think about really good times. That would be appealing to somebody's emotions, making them think really positively about eating sugar. So they might be less convinced to cut down the sugar intake. But if your argument was to not cut it down, then that would be an effective argument. You could use emotions that are very sad, saying, I had a family member who passed away, and I've never been the same since, and they passed away from type 2 diabetes because they didn't have a good diet. Then you might make somebody feel sad and therefore convince them that way. So also using their value system. So generally, if somebody has an idea of what they think is right or wrong, you could, for example, if you're trying to convince somebody to put a security system in their house, you're using their value system if they believe that stealing is wrong. So that's something that you generally want to keep in mind when you're addressing your audience. So just to finish up, we do have this extra resource in case you need a refresher or to review what we talked about in class. It's a great video if you just click the link right there, and it just kind of goes over persuasive arguments. And now we are going to begin our handout, which explains our assignment for the day, where you are going to begin creating an outline for your assignment. Thanks.